Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I am your host, Marshall, and today on our show, we're going to be talking about committing to Kriegsspiel. And I even made a little PowerPoint because I was like, this is not one of those episodes where I just put up Tabletop Simulator and you look at a map while I talk in the corner. I figured I would put some text on the screen because this is one of those more academic conversations, and there's information. I'm going to try to drop some knowledge here that I think will help everyone out, the community at large, as well as many individuals, whether you be a player or an umpire in particular. Um, I thought about this extensively over the weekend and actually several days prior to that. So I think I have some good knowledge to share with you based on my experience, and some of it's frankly common sense. And I think you'll benefit from watching this video and taking some of this advice. Before I get really into it, though, I do want to check my Discord. I want to make sure that the. Okay, well, alright, that's gone. Let's make sure. All right, there we are there. I'm just making sure that all the stream and everything is running, that all the technicals are accurate. Okay, well, with that said, let's go ahead and get started and let's talk about today's topic, committing to Kriegsspiel. So, this is a picture of my breakfast this morning. Not really, it's from a meme. I took it. But here you have the chicken and the pig, and I just want to talk about commitment. Did I misspell commitment or something? Of course I did. There we go. But in any case, when you play a game, particularly when you umpire it, but also I think when you play it, you're making a commitment, and it's very important to be committed. It's just like my breakfast. Some people want to be involved, and this morning the chicken was involved in my breakfast, but the pig was committed. And that's what we expect to see, especially if you're going to be an umpire. You really do have to commit, and that means you have to play your game all the way through. And that means you can't drop out, you can't get tired, you can't stop, you can't really even slow down. Because once you start doing those things, then the whole experience kind of starts to collapse for everyone. So you have to be committed. So you can't be just involved like the chicken was, you have to be committed like the pig is. Okay? All right, let's talk about some things. Let's talk about the problem first. And the real problem is really that life gets in the way. We are all adults. We have families, most of us. We have jobs. We have life in general. And so what will happen is we come in with all of this enthusiasm, right? We have this beautiful idea. Maybe we see a map or something that inspires us, or we watch a movie, or we listen to a podcast or read a book or something. But we start jonesing for a particular Kriegsspiel. Maybe you want to run a naval event or a Napoleonic event or World War II, Civil War, whatever it may be. But you get this itch, and you're like, I want to see this hit the table. And so you come up with this brilliant plan, this brilliant Kriegsspiel, and you go online and you announce it. You tell everybody, hey, I'm going to run this incredible game. It's going to be, Civil War, and we're going to play the whole Civil War from beginning to end, which is actually a monster game that's ongoing right now, and it's a brilliant effort. Um, but this happens all the time. People will come into the IKS, they'll announce a game, they'll attract a bunch of play-by-post players, and the game will start off well enough, and for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, perhaps it goes really, really well. And then the delays start happening. The umpire's like, well, I got this going on, or I have a busy week, or I'm sick, or I got vacation, or whatever it is, life interferes. Same thing happens to the players. And you'll get a player who will say, I've got this XYZ issue, and I'm not going to, I've got to take a day or two off, or a week off, or whatever. And pretty soon, the day or two or the week off becomes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on. And before you know it, the game is completely abandoned. And this happens all the time. And that's a problem because it tarnishes your credibility as an umpire. And by the way, just for full confession here, I've done this myself. I've run a game that where it got to the point where the time that I had to run the game to umpire it, that time went away, and I had great difficulty getting back to deliver updates. And eventually, one of the administrators of the game got tired of it and opened all the channels. And I don't blame him. That was about a year and a half ago. But it happens to all of us. And that's where some of this insight comes from, you know. So judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from poor judgment. So here you have it. But in any case, we know what the problem is, right? Life interferes. And these are valid reasons. You know, you can't be expected to table your family or your job or other obligations that are like real life that are taking place in what we might call meat space. You can't set that aside in order to play a game. We get it. We understand. But that's a problem. But let's talk about how we can fix this. The other thing is how far are games taken? Because this is something that most people don't understand in Kriegsspiel. Professional practitioners of Kriegsspiel actually rarely play out the actual battles. A lot of times they're only trying to focus on a particular lesson or a particular moment in the engagement or something like that, and they're trying to teach a concept or an idea to cadets. Likewise, here in the IKS, sometimes we will play games where we're just interested in exploring something. Here's an example. A couple months ago, we ran kind of this little exercise, and the exercise was on scouting. Now, there were scouting forces, cavalry forces on both sides on the map, and there were also columns of infantry on the map. So you had these two armies that were coming together, but the exercise was for the players running the cavalry to learn how to correctly scout. And so the scouting happened, and the infantry columns started moving towards each other, and then the game ends. The game ended before the infantry columns were deployed into line and smashed into each other. Why? Because the purpose of the exercise was achieved. A lot of professional practitioners will end their games early because the purpose of the exercise is achieved. Likewise, as umpires, when we play games, we rarely play games to the bitter end. On average, if you play a Kriegsspiel game and you play in real time, you can expect to get about 9 to 18 turns on average, with maybe, I think 12 is probably about the average number of turns you're going to get to play in a game. Some games and some umpires and some systems give you more, others give you less. It just depends. But you can usually count on playing a minimum of 9 turns. That means you get to make 9 moves on the map, of which half of those moves are probably just march to contact. And that means that if you have some grand plan or whatever, you need to enact it quickly. Now, why don't umpires let you play to the bitter end? Why don't they let you have 30 moves, which is what a typical battle might involve? And I picked the number 30 out of a hat, so don't quote me on that. But the reason is, again, the purpose of the exercise. The other reason is we don't have all day. We don't have time. We found that Kriegsspiel games can run for about 4 or 5 hours, and anything longer than 5 hours, it becomes really tedious for the umpires and really tedious for many players. Players have to go. They have other things to do with their day. They have to drop out. It just fizzles out. Plus, once a decision point is reached in a game, and you might not see that that decision point has been reached, but the umpires generally see it very clearly. Once they see that big flanking force roll into the flank and they begin to roll up the enemy line, you might be at the opposite end of the line, and so you don't get that report. But the battle is functionally over. The army is going to be in retreat in the next turn or two, and it's a done deal. Playing out those final turns to the bitter end doesn't do much for anybody. It might be really fun for the people who are doing the steamrolling, but for the people on the receiving end, it's just going to be a very bitter experience. A lot of times there's no point to doing that. It's good enough to say, look, you did it, good job, attaboy. Um, that's the game. And, then you have the rest of your day to do other things. So we don't want games that run 8, 10, 12 hours. Likewise with play-by-post. Now, a play-by-post, you could take it further because it's not the same time commitment, but do you need to? Do you want to? Because especially as an umpire, you're committing to spending about, I would say, if you're running a play-by-post game, your update time is at least an hour per game on average. At least that's been my experience when I've done play-by-post updates. It's usually between 30 minutes to an hour is the commitment that it takes me to do updates. It could be longer, it could be shorter, it just depends. So you have to communicate with players how far you're going to take the game. You have to tell them that this game is going to play to the bitter end, or this game is going to play to a decision point, or this game is only going to play to the point when the main armies come into contact because, we're running a scouting exercise or something like that. So if the game is not going to play until the last soldier is killed or routed, which you could do that, tell the players where to expect the end to be. So that way they're not surprised or shocked or upset. Help to manage expectations. Now, let's talk about you as an umpire. If you're just sitting here and you're like, I really want to run this play-by-post, or I really want to run this game, let's talk about it, okay? You know your lifestyle. You know what your schedule is probably going to look like a month or 2 months or 3 months or so on down the road. You know when your vacations are. You know if you've got kids or not, I hope. If sports season is coming up. You know all of these things, right? You should. If you don't know these things, if your lifestyle is quite variable and you really can't foresee a month or two into the future, if you don't have that kind of stability in your life, I'm probably going to say to you, with all kindness and respect, that you probably don't want to run a play-by-post. Maybe you could assist, but you probably don't really want to get into a play-by-post where you're a key player or certainly not an umpire if something has the potential to disrupt your schedule in the next, over the course of the game so that you can't finish the game. Just don't. Okay? It's just better that way. It's like getting into a bad relationship. Just, maybe not. Good looking, but not for me, right? Same thing here. Okay? Just be smart about it. I really am a fan of smaller games. Small games run faster, they're a lot less work, and frankly, they are just as fun as the monsters. When I wrote the K22 Kriegsspiel system, it was designed to be small. Like you can literally sit down with 2 players and play a tiny game that only lasts 1 to 2 hours. And I assure you that if you do that, you will scratch that Kriegsspiel itch and you will have a great time and everybody will be happy and you'll want to come back and play again soon. It works. It does it. And everybody wants to run a monster and not everybody can run a monster campaign. You have to keep the games small so they run faster and they're less work for everybody. It means less burnout. I am guilty of this too. I have a very, very bad personal habit of not turning people away. People say, hey, can I play? Can I get in? Well, I'm full, but okay, I'll make a spot for you. Come on in. I do that to myself all the time. And then what happens? I'm just buried in an avalanche of work when it comes time to do an update. Then I don't want to do the update because it's like I don't have a solid hour to sit here and do this. And then what happens? What's the consequence of that? Well, probably a game that's not going to finish. That's frustrating for everyone. So run a smaller game. Or if you're just starting, run small games at first and then kind of push outwards. Okay? The next bit of advice would be get assistants to help you. Get people to help you. Call for help. Come to the IKS and tell us, hey, I need some assistance. I'm trying to run this game. Will somebody assist? Now, you're probably not going to get mobbed with people dying to assist in your game, but you might get 1 or 2. The people who volunteer will probably be relative novices, but they're people who want to learn how to umpire. So, bring them on board, teach them your system. You'll find that they're very enthusiastic. You'll find that they'll be reliable helpers oftentimes. So don't be afraid to ask people to help you run your game. Although I would suggest that you solicit these people prior to starting the game. Trying to get people once a game is running, it's very intimidating for a person to walk into a game in the middle and try to pick up dice and start, following along because they don't know what the history is or anything. So a lot of people are afraid. They're afraid they'll kind of spoil the experience if they walk into the middle of a game and start umpiring with you. So it's better to solicit people up at the beginning, okay? All right, you have to keep to a schedule. And this is something, again, you have to communicate to the players. If your schedule is weekly, it better be weekly. And I don't like weekly schedules, by the way. I advise that you run a daily schedule. And if you can't do daily, 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, I think you're pushing it. Why a daily schedule? That sounds quite grueling, and it is. That's, again, why you want to keep the game small. Daily schedules are easier to keep. It's like, when you say, I'm going to go to the gym, and if you go to the gym daily, it's easier to do that. If you say, I'm going to go to the gym weekly, you think that's easier, but it ain't. You're going to be tempted. Oh, you know what? I got something that came up. Normally on Sundays I run this event. I got something that came up. I'll do it next Sunday. Well, next Sunday comes around and something else will come up. And because you're already waiting a week between the updates, taking 1 week off is rough. 2 or 3 weeks off, forget it. People just lose interest. What would you do if you talk to your love interest every day and then one day she doesn't call you? She doesn't answer the phone. How many days are you going to call her for 3 weeks every day? No. You're done. It's like, well, quit talking to me. I'm not interested. So you want to do this daily, and it's the same thing with Kriegsspiel. Your players want these updates. They are jonesing for these updates, and they live in the updates. When the updates stop flowing, they'll wander off and find something else to do, and it's hard to get people back. Also, if you have games that are going to last many, many weeks, it's hard to keep players plugged in just for that long, even with daily updates. And the reason is very simple. Their lives change. Our lives change over, month to month to month. Things happen, and when that goes down, you're like, hey, I'm out, I've got other things going on. They just kind of wander off. It fades. The interest fades, so it's like that. All right, let's take a look at. I think this is one of the biggest tips I can give you is communicate with the players up front. Tell them how far you're going to play the game. How far are we going with this? Are we going to play just to contact? Are we going to play until there's a decision, a decisive moment reached in the battle? Are we going to play to the end of the battle? How far are we going to go? Is it a campaign or we're going to play multiple battles? Tell them. Just tell them. Up front so they know what they're signing up for. And then what their commitment is, you can tell I don't know how to spell the word commitment apparently, but there we are. What their commitment is. In other words, how much and how often will they need to be on? If they're going to have to give you daily updates, daily orders, then tell them that up front so that they can sit there and have that honest question, discussion with themselves. Can I be on daily to play Kriegsspiel? Is my update, if my update's 5 minutes, yeah, I can get on my phone right here and play Kriegsspiel every day. I can do a little update. If my update is going to take me 30 minutes as a player, I probably can't do a daily game, and I'm going to have to take a pass. And you tell people that so they can make that decision. That way there's no disappointments. Again, everything is laid out up front. What will happen if someone needs a day or two off? You have to tell them that. Because it is going to happen. Especially if you run a daily update game. There's going to be something that happens that's going to require you to take a day, 2, or even 3 off. That does happen. And it could be an emergency or it could be something that you foresee. You might say, I want to run this game, But 4 weeks from now, I have a week's vacation and I'm going to go camping and I'm going to be disconnected from the internet, and I deserve that. Hey, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. Go catch some fish or go hiking. Have a great time. We'll wait for you to come back. But again, communicate to the players that that's going to happen up front. The other thing is, if the player says, hey, I've got this going on, you as the umpire then have to make a decision. Do I put the game on hold? And if it's a small game, you probably do. If it's a big game, you probably don't. And what you'll do is you tell the player, well, give me your general intent and I will bot your units for you. Bot, short for robot, meaning that as an umpire, I'm going to play according to your orders, your formation until you get back to take it back over. That usually works. And you could also slow it down. You could say, well, so-and-so's going to be gone, so we're only going to take 2 or 3 turns this week so he doesn't get too behind. And then when he comes back, we'll go back to the daily. I think those things are understandable. And if you're running games to completion and you're upfront with players and so on, and you're communicating, I think you'll have the credibility to do that. Nobody will have an issue with it. Everybody's going to be super cool. It's all good. All right, so that's the thing to do if people need time off. Be exclusive. Not everyone can play if they can't keep to the schedule. Look, if you can't keep to the schedule, then this game is not for you. I'm sorry, but you need to have these honest conversations with yourselves, with the players, with the umpires, and tell people what you expect. And if you can't meet the expectation, you're out. One of the best experiences I had was people would see it as a negative experience. And at the moment, I was like, oh, well, that sucks. But at the same time, I actually thought it was kind of cool. I think John put together a game, and he set this expectation that you have to give an update every day. And if you don't give an update within 24 hours, you'll be replaced. And I think I came on like so many hours late, but it was outside of the 24 hours. And I go to my update channel. He's like, well, Marshall didn't give an order. Marshall's been replaced. And my replacement was in there playing that role. I actually think that's great, because that's what you need as an umpire to get the game moving. And I think he was testing something, which is why he wanted to play with that level of discipline. I actually thought that was just fine. And that's what you have to do. Sometimes you have to replace players. Players drop out, replace them. And that's another advantage to keeping a small game. If the game is small and exclusive, you're going to have a wait list of players who want to play, and that allows you then to rotate someone in. And if a person's going to be gone for, let's say, a week or two, well, have them have an understudy or an assistant or a lieutenant, would be the military term, I suppose. And the lieutenant can play in their stead while they're gone for that week or two, and the game just keeps moving. And again, if a person disappears off the face of the earth, you replace them immediately. Just get someone else in there. And it's not personal, it's not negative. It's like, I'm sorry, but the game's got to go. The show must go on. On a Broadway performance, if an actor falls and injures themselves and can't come on stage, well, the understudy steps up. The show must go on. They don't cancel the show. So the show must go on. So not everyone can play. All right. You need discipline to push to the grind, because at a certain point, this is going to turn into a grind, especially for you as an umpire doing the updates. It's going to be a chore. It's going to be a chore like dusting and vacuuming and doing dishes and, cleaning the yard, mowing the lawn. It's going to be that kind of a chore. If you can't handle that, don't do it. Don't. There are people who rent their houses or hire gardeners because they don't want to mow the lawn every week. Great. Don't do it. You don't want to do it, don't do it. We live in a free society, at least here in America, technically. So you don't want to mow your lawn, don't mow your lawn. Hire someone to do it. Get someone else to do it. Let it grow with weeds, I suppose. Not good for the property value or the neighborhood, but don't do it. Don't want to do it, don't do it. Very simple. Do what you want to do. And so here's the thing. You need to have that discipline. If you want to have that beautiful lawn, right, you have to get out there and work in that yard. That's going to be a weekly thing. Otherwise, you're just not going to have the beautiful yard. It's the same thing with the Kriegsspiel. If you want to have an amazing Kriegsspiel experience, you've got to go out and put the work in. If you can't do that, or you don't want to do that, or you're going to burn out, you're afraid, or whatever it may be, don't do it. Very simple. So there you have it. And that's the end of this. So the only thing I would tell you is the IKS brand means something. For those of you who become master umpires and you want to use the IKS brand as part of your server, the whole point of that is that communicates to players that you're going to keep to these standards, that you're going to communicate with the players up front, that you're going to commit to running the game to the finish, and that at the end of the day, everybody's going to have a good experience. They're going to get what they signed up for. They're going to get the regular updates, and it's going to be a good, fun experience for everyone. So just remember, you got to be committed. The chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. And that's what we need here in the IKS. I've got a whole bunch of you who are listening on the stage. And if anybody wants to ask a question or anything, we've got some time. You can raise your hand. I see James is up in here. I don't know how he came up here, but he's welcome. You're all welcome here on stage. But if anyone has a question or a comment, please raise your hand and I'll bring you up to speak. In fact, I think I'll just invite everyone, and anybody who wants to come up can pop up. And if you don't, that's fine. We'll wrap up. But
So I'll make a few comments if you don't mind.
absolutely, James. Here's James, one of our master umpires. Go ahead, James.
Thank you. So I didn't catch everything, but the last 10 minutes I caught, I agree with almost all of it. One thing I would say in terms of frequency is I like doing 2 to 3 days. And I agree with your reasoning on the 1 day, but the reason I do 2 to 3 days is because we are an international community.
Mm-hmm.
And with 1 day, it's usually not enough time to have back and forth. If you're co-located with another commander, and let's say he's in somewhere in Europe and you're in the U.S., it's nice to be able to have, if you're co-located and you need to talk to each other, some time to talk back and forth before you have to put in your orders. And if you do 24 hours, there's just not that much time to do that. You may be able to say something and maybe get something back. And so I find that having 2 to 3 days allows for more player interaction, which can be a lot of fun.
That's a great point. That's an excellent point. Yes. Yeah, and that works. So good.
Yep. And the other thing, and maybe you said at the beginning the part that I missed, I think for sure, don't take on more than you can do. Start small, see what you can handle. That way you can keep up with the updates. And then think about your scenario design. You will have players won't drop off if they're having fun and they're engaged. And so if they feel like they're making an impact to whatever the scenario is, the battle, they're making meaningful decisions and impacting things, they're going to want to stick around and see what happens. And so, sometimes it's unavoidable. You're going to have some marching simulators every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
But the better you can design the scenario so that every player feels engaged and feels like they're making an impact, they're going to stick around and they're not going to drop.
Good
Those are
points.
mine.
Thank you, James. No, I think that's excellent input. That's just brilliant to hear those observations. It's right. So support that entirely. Okay, I see there's a couple other people here, a few other. I'm inviting everyone up onto stage systematically, and the intention is simply to give everybody an opportunity to speak if they want to speak, or ask a question. Anybody else?
I've just this thought, just to I listened to what you said and actually agree with pretty much 95% of all of it and what James has said. I'd say one of the things, just from my observation from doing the Peninsula campaign that we're doing and stuff, is one, as you said, be honest with yourself and be honest with the players. I've been engaged with umpires that dropped where they just stopped communicating and they said we're going to have a break, and then that break becomes 1 week, becomes 2 weeks, becomes 3 weeks. I think I slightly disagree with you that players will accept breaks, but you just need to be honest about it. So we had a break for 4 weeks over Christmas. We were honest about it, and everybody's come back to the game, and everybody's back engaged in the game. And I think that's really important. If you're honest and you discuss things with people, then they will stick with you. For instance, I know Peter took over a game that I was in that I dropped out of, but there was too big a break, and then when Peter took over, it was just like I just lost interest. I think umpires sometimes as well. I think this is partly through experience. Underestimate how much work it's going to be, so they underestimate how many umpires that they need. And I think we found that as well. We doubled our umpires in the game. So I think it's kind of stuff like that. But that was just two things that I kind of picked up on from what you'd said.
Thank you. That's excellent observations. And again, that's why I want to bring you guys up here because you folks have had a wealth of experiences and you're coming up with points and things to add that I didn't quite think of. And it's good to hear all these ideas and observations. On a somewhat related note, I'm getting reports that I'm not actually streaming to YouTube. It says that I am, but there's nobody able to view it for some reason. So something's going on. But as long as it's streaming there, it's recording to YouTube. There could be a setting that I've tweaked. So I will investigate that afterwards. But thank you to everyone who's let me know that it's not visible on YouTube. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, that's it. I'll go fix the YouTube issue, and then you'll all be able to watch and share the recording later. I want to thank you all for being here. It was a cool podcast. I spent a lot of time thinking and working on this one. You can probably tell the quality of my presentation's a little better because I carefully considered what I was going to say beforehand. Wasn't so off the cuff. As always, it's good to have a plan, right? But I want to thank you all for being here and those of you who spoke and commented. And if you have additional, comments or questions, you can post this under the YouTube video, which I hope will be visible by the time or shortly after this wraps up. And you can, of course, reach us on our IKS Discord. People can also private message me and so on. I do respond to all of that. So I want to thank you all for being here, and we will see you on the next